Hey, Clutterbugs, welcome back to the Clutterbug podcast. Today is an exciting interview. I'm chatting with the incredible Madison Gray. She is a fellow YouTuber with a really unique approach on slow, simple living. I find her so inspiring. I love following her on Instagram and watching her YouTube videos. And I know you are going to be just as inspired as I am. So, hi, Madison. Welcome. I'm going to call you Maddie. Thank you so much for being on the Clutterbug podcast.
Oh, Cass, thanks for having me. This is an honor for me.
It's very exciting. I've been crushing your YouTube channel. You are like, you're owning this whole minimalism thing, but you're really calling it something else, which I love. It's all about slow, simple living.
Yeah.
And tell me, how long have you been doing this?
So for me, it all started with the birth of my first daughter, which I've heard from a lot of other women is kind of, it can be their starting point to kind of like reconnecting with who they really are and what's really a priority for them in life. It's like a reawakening almost when you have your first baby. And plus, life with kids can be so hectic that I know for many women and for me as well, it was like, okay, if I'm going to really enjoy this, we need to streamline. We need to streamline the household. We need to streamline the schedule. Otherwise, this is just, it's chaos and I'm stressed. And so, yeah, it wasn't long after her birth that I realized like everything that the modern mom was doing and being, and the house that I was aspiring to, this, I don't know if you ever watched the, oh gosh, what's it called? Back when I was a kid, there was this TV show. It was like Extreme Home Makeover, and they would move the bus. Like every week we would tune in, and it was this mansion, right? And so I grew up just like aspiring to this mansion house with like made over rooms and color schemes, and just nothing that I am now. But yeah, it was like a reckoning for me. I became a mom pretty young, and I think just everything collided at the right time, honestly, for me to just kind of wake up again to what was truly important to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. I'm older than you. I could be your mommy, I think, but we we when I first had kids, there wasn't, I felt like there was definitely still pressure, but I didn't have the same social media pressure that there is today.
Yeah.
And so I feel it, and I feel for young moms because you're supposed to be cutting their sandwiches into butterflies with cookie cutters, and your house is like gorge, and what is happening, and where's all your stuff, and why is everything
That's
like
so true.
beautiful, subtle tones of brown? Like, what
It's so
is
true. The neutrals.
it's like some Wes Anderson film, but you're really living it. And, you know, and everything's like, do, do, do. But we know that that's not reality because you're covered in baby vomit and there's crap everywhere and crumbs on the floor. And I thrive in chaos. And I say this, and I know maybe this is a cop out, but I have ADHD. So I was one baby. I was like, yeah. And
Were
then
you?
two babies. It was the second baby for me.
Yeah.
It all came toppling down, and it was, I, you know, I say this, but I still feel like this today. Life felt heavy. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I
I
felt
resonate with that a lot.
heavy. So I had to put something down because
Yes.
I couldn't carry it all. And what I put down was the excess clutter first. I
Yeah.
just put that down. And wow, I felt lighter. And the more I decluttered, it was like, and you have had this exact same like experience. You are you got rid of so much. Tell me, tell me how much you got rid of.
Yeah, we did. Well, ultimately, it was over the course of, let's see, my daughter was 4 when we moved to Hawaii. But yeah, over those 4 years, we went from like a, normal suburban home to 6 suitcases. We got rid of everything and moved to Hawaii. We don't actually live in Hawaii and now. Ironically, we live in the suburbs near my parents in Southern California with a totally different lifestyle. But it's like we needed to do that complete purge, almost like recentering time. The time in Hawaii was really beautiful, I think, with just so much less focus on material possessions And yeah, just also seeing our kids, we had 2 kids at that point, thriving without toys. People get so upset when I say that. But they have toys now. But at the time, you're like, no, like if it's not essential in 6 suitcases, like we're not bringing it. So, yeah, that was just such a. I feel like that was the place where my YouTube channel got birthed from. Was that experience being like, okay, it doesn't need to be this extreme where you have only 6 suitcases and you live in Hawaii, but like experiencing this and realizing like this is not just yeah, it's not just a YouTube video. Like this really is uh beautiful. Like for my children are more emotionally regulated. I feel emotionally regulated. I've been able to process things. And when I first had my daughter, I had a lot of postpartum anxiety, which I know is pretty common in the US for women. And yeah, minimalism was like a tool that helped me really process that. And so like I feel like it all culminated when we were in Hawaii and just having all this time in nature and togetherness as a family. And yeah, we were able to move back to Southern California, ironically to the suburbs, which isn't where I plan to spend the rest of my life, I'll be honest. But for now, it's nice. We're saving money and we're down the street from family and we have really great community here. So I think that now that I was able to kind of integrate those 2 lifestyles, and it gives me so much inspiration. And that's what I love sharing on the internet, is just like kind of this middle ground of like slow living doesn't have to be rural countryside. You can integrate it into your normal life in the suburbs or wherever you live.
I love that because I'm like a huge I follow a lot of homesteaders just because it's so
Yeah, me too.
it's like I aspire to be more like that. But the truth is I'm not like that. Listen, I hate the taste of sourdough. Can I just say
Do
that?
you really?
I hate it. I hate it. I was like making
It's
bread
so
and stuff.
funny.
I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't me. But I don't think it's
Yeah,
that I'm looking for. It's the slower paced life. And
right.
if you're listening to this right now and you're also like, man, that sound like you're fantasizing about that, but you're not going to move to Hawaii or
Right.
buy a farm,
Yes.
we can still have what we're really craving, which
Mm-hmm.
is that slower, simple life. And it really does. And nobody wants to hear this. Listen, every podcast I say this and I feel like what people are like, Cass, give me something else other than this. But it starts with putting down the things that you're
Yeah.
carrying that you don't want anyways. The
Mm-hmm.
things that you're not using, donate them, get rid of them. And there's so much like fear about letting go of good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is still good. This is what I hear. Why would I let that go? It's still good.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, it's not good for you. It's not good for you because it's too much for you to handle.
Mm-hmm.
And you felt this. You felt the world. It's you how do we describe this, Maddie? How do we describe the feeling on the other side when you let go
Mm-hmm.
of the things you don't even know that are burdens?
I
You
really
know?
like how Minimal Mom describes the inventory. Like every single thing we own is like a tab open in our brain. And like everyone knows, if your computer's running slow, like you close tabs, you streamline its processing. And I hate to compare us to machines, but for me, that is how it felt. Like it feels like, oh my gosh, this machine is just running properly. And I didn't need to go on a fancy diet or take a bunch of supplements. Like I really needed to lower my inventory to let my body and I guess my mind thrive. And so I agree. I think it starts with decluttering as well. I say that all the time too.
Yeah. And I also I let go of the dream of making homemade bread. I
Mm-hmm.
put things down that didn't fill me that I felt I had to carry.
Yeah.
I stopped saying yes to a bunch of things and a bunch of people. I just was like, how can and I have a long way to go. My toe's very swollen, Maddie. I'm going to tell you, I have rheumatoid arthritis in my toe. And my husband's like, you have to eat better. He was reading WebMD's like, eat better, exercise, and have less stress. And I was like, thank you
Okay.
very
Done.
much,
Easy. I'll
Captain
start that
Obvious.
tomorrow. Yeah.
I'll just do all those things.
I'll
But
completely change my life.
we
Oh,
do need less stress. And I think that's
yeah.
what you are really doing with a slow, simple living. It at the end of the day, it's all about less stress. I actually follow you on Instagram and I saw this. You did this post about like fast food versus slow food. I've never heard anyone use the term slow food
Oh,
before.
really?
N- So I found that so fascinating. Can
Me
you
too.
talk about that just for a second? Like fast food versus slow food because this resonated with me.
Hmm. Me too. Yeah, I think it probably resonates with everyone because food is just like so human. Like, I think the way we grow it and the way we prepare it, it sets us apart from all other animals in creation. I think it's like this very human experience. So, for those that aren't familiar, slow living, which sometimes to me is ironic that it has to be a movement at all, because it's just like normal human life without the excess. But it is a movement that began in Italy with the slow food movement. So when I think it was in the 70s when food started becoming something that was imported a lot, like it wasn't local farms selling food, people eating locally, wine started being imported and exported. There were suddenly all these opportunities to make more money by it just imports and exports. That was when, understandably, people of Italian heritage got upset because food, like we know of Italian culture, is like so rich in their heritage. And so there began this movement when I believe it was a McDonald's was proposed to be built in Rome, like on the Spanish Steps, I think, and Italians were outraged, and so they started this movement. And basically, it's if you've lived in America your whole life, probably all you know is fast food culture. And it's just kind of the things we hear all the time, like, cheaper is better and faster is better. And there's no connection to where that thing was made, the soil in which it came from, the family recipe in which that was developed. It's just this very rich, totally different product than what you would have in a fast food restaurant that's a chain, that's very disconnected from the process. I think at the core, slow living is about savoring the process rather than just
Mm.
efficiency of results. So, yeah, I feel like that it resonates a lot for me too. So I'm glad to hear you say that it resonates for you, because there's so
It
much to it.
really
There's so many
I'm
layers.
I'm just like so anti Costco. I mean, I sometimes
You're
go to Costco,
I
but
go to
I
Costco.
curse
Yeah.
it every time I'm in there. I'm like, this is hell.
It's
Like
the
if I
ultimate
died tomorrow
American.
and went to
Yeah.
the bad place, it would be Costco. But I come home, I'm like, where am I going to put all this crap? But there's so much like frozen meals and quick, 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 and it's
Yeah.
always just not satisfying in
Mm.
some way. But I'm busy. I'm busy. I get it. But the thing I've really found is we have a little garden. I pick some ripe tomatoes, chop them up,
Mm.
put them in some olive oil, fry them, maybe
I
some
love
zucchini,
that.
add some pasta. That's always like so good,
Don't you feel so
so
good
much
about yourself?
faster.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and it's here before the pizza would get here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I actually feel really good about myself, which is something there's been a disconnect when it comes with food. I hate cooking. I'm not
Mm.
good at it. But I can still whip together these like
Yeah. Simple
nutritious,
things.
healthy,
Yeah.
simple things.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it does do so I'm trying, Maddie. I'm trying
No
a
pressure
little
from
bit.
me. I think, yeah, you got to prioritize what works for you. But that's the other thing. I don't know if you ever feel like this about your content. Like, I never want to be anybody's guru. Like, to be like, this is the
Mm.
answer and this is the way everyone should live. Like, this is just what's working for me. And I assume that people will approach it and be like, okay, I can take bits of that works for me and not with the rest of it, you
I
know?
love that. Yeah, for sure. It's like I'm addicted to self-help books and I always get like one little nugget of something. Most of the
Hmm.
book I'm like, that probably doesn't, or I
Yeah.
forget But
Yeah.
the more I just keep consuming this, my life just like inch by inch gets
Yeah.
slightly
Yeah.
better. And I love the idea of being able to just kind of, it's not like I'm coming up with anything new. I'm just like recycling the stuff
Right.
that's working
Yes.
and like, hey
Yes.
man, save yourself the time and try
Yes.
all this stuff. But I think we're all craving. We're all craving. There's something missing, I think. And we're all feeling suffocating and like
Mhm.
such a burden. And I work with a lot of clients when it comes to decluttering, and I just see them. This is how I see them. They're in a rowboat in the ocean, and the waves are splashing over, right? And there's a hole in the boat, and it's filling
Mhm.
with water. And they're getting cups and bowls to put the water in the boat in, right? Instead of bailing
Yeah.
it out
Yeah.
or plugging the hole. This is
Yes.
what we're filling our home and lives, not just
Yeah.
with stuff, but with like pressure and like commitments and
Yeah.
work and all these things. And not only are we not plugging the hole, but we're not bailing the water out so we
Mhm.
stop sinking. There's always going to be water sloshing over the side, but we just have to consistently keep kind of getting it out instead of
Mhm.
putting more containers for
Yeah.
that
Don't you
stuff to
think
go
like
in.
we're so marketed to that way? Like that it's just become our resting state? Because I still struggle with that too of like, oh, I'm having this issue. I can't even think of an example. It's like I should buy a solution for that.
Buy a
Rather
solution.
than like, I wonder if there's a different approach. Like it's just I wonder if other people are like that
Absolutely.
too. Because
I think that's
yeah.
human nature. My
Yeah,
toe hurt
it
this
might
morning
be.
and I immediately was like, I said to my husband, do I need a toe? Can I cut it off? Is there a pill I
Like
can take?
order
Is there a
one.
something? Where's the fast, like, how
Yeah,
can I just,
yeah.
and move on to the next thing instead of dealing with like the root of the issue? And I think
Hmm.
the root of all of our issue, whether it's financial problems, we struggle with weight, we struggle with like relationships, we struggle with keeping our sanity and our home. It all comes down to like, we're taking on too
Hmm.
much stuff, just too much. There's more than we can handle. And yeah, so I just love slow, simple living. I love the message that and I could just watch you, your beautiful aesthetic. Your YouTube
Thank
videos
you.
are like, they're like some sort of just trip down gorgeousness. The
Thank you.
music,
That means
your
a lot to me.
timing, it's such an enjoyable experience to watch you on YouTube. And I feel that must be what your life is like. I'm sure it's not like that 24/7.
Oh, no.
I'm sure you get stressed, but I want more. I'm like, I want to be more like Madison. I read something about Blue Zone, and I
Oh,
have
yeah.
no idea what this is. Please,
Really?
what is Blue Zone? No, I've never heard of this before.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I would love to talk to you about blue zones. Okay, so it's actually surprising to me that more people haven't heard about this, but the blue zones are these areas in the world where the most centenarians have been located. Like parts of the world where there's like hotspots of people living long, healthy lives. And most of the time, I would say, except for Loma Linda, which is here in California, like outside the medical system. So it's not like they're being treated long term for, like they're taking drugs to stay healthy, or like we said, like buying fixes. They're actually just
Hmm.
genuinely like living long, healthy lives. And so I think it's fascinating. And in creating my course, like I studied the blue zones a lot because there's lifestyle habits and there's diet habits that I think we can glean from the blue zones. But I was lucky enough to visit a blue zone. Was it a month ago now? I think so. Anyway, in Sardinia, which is a little island off the coast of Italy, and it's actually the original blue zone. That I'm not sure what the team of researchers were. I'll have to send you some articles for the show notes if people want to dive deeper into this. But yeah, where people consistently live to be over 100 years of age. And what I found while being there is like, these are mostly impoverished areas. And it was shocking to me that people have these rich, fulfilling lives with very little, very small little apartment homes, surrounded by like typically multi-generational family, and not much stuff, like not all of our modern conveniences,
Definitely no
and
McDonald's.
no McDonald's. That's for sure, no McDonald's. Yeah, they're working hard, But it's like, wait, you guys actually, like we were talking about earlier, it's like, it feels like it's all too much for us. Like they actually are handling it. Like they can handle the stress of their life and it's adding to their health. And yeah, I don't even have all the answers to it, right? Like I'm just someone fascinated by it
So
too, but it's really
fascinating.
interesting. And the other thing that I think is like something that just stands out to me is that they all have this pace of life that's much slower than ours. It's like there are these natural transitions within their day that I think we've lost in our modern society. And they rest, like they rest
Mm.
on Sunday. Typically, most of them are either Catholic or some type of religion that would consistently take a day off and just play, right? Or like be with family or drink wine and have good food, that kind of thing. And it's not that hard or like crazy, but it is very different, right, than like our modern
I'm going to look into
society.
this. It's probably going to make me want to eat like more avocados or something, right? Like omega fatty and health and oh gosh. Okay. But okay, I live in Canada and I live
Okay.
in this part of Canada, like southwestern Ontario, that's very, for us, it's very like city like.
Okay.
Everyone has perfectly manicured lawns. It's lots of suburbia.
Yeah.
Everyone's driving like fancy vehicles. It's very hustle and bustly. When we're
Yes.
walking down the street, it's very like everyone's walking fast. And I lived in New York for 6 months, and that's like on steroids.
Oof. Yeah.
People in New York are just running. Everywhere they go, they're running. And if you step in front of a car, you're dead because the
Yes.
car is not
Yes.
stopping for you. Like you're
Yes.
always hyper aware. At any moment, you can die. There's some sort of like frantic energy in
Yeah.
New York. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is toxic. And
Yeah.
I come back to where I live and I'm like, oh, it's less toxic here.
Mm-hmm.
But I go visit my brother in Nova Scotia, which is also in Canada. You get off the plane and it's everyone's slower.
Hmm.
Everyone's walking slower. If you go to step off a curb in Nova Scotia, all the cars gently
Oh.
come to a stop for you. People open the door. Everyone's hi. And my
Oh.
husband noticed something as we were driving through the suburbs there to go to my brother's house. None of the lawns are perfectly manicured.
Mm.
There's weeds in the gardens, like the front door maybe isn't perfectly
Yeah.
painted.
Yeah.
It's very different there, and everyone's smiling more and slower. It's culturally slower
Right.
in the
Right.
entire province, and I don't know what the difference is. I It feels like they just have less pressure. They still have beautiful
Mm.
homes and great jobs, and they still have a
Mm.
McDonald's, Maddie. But
I just want to admit they still have a McDonald's. You're
it's
so
not
funny.
about the food. They still
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
stuff to. It's
Yeah.
very much like everyone around just has less rush,
Mm-hmm.
less frantic energy to work harder.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much
Mm-hmm.
like, especially where I live and definitely in New York, it feels like the bigger the place, there's more like pride taken in how busy you are and how
Oh,
much you're
so
juggling. They're like, how
true.
have you been?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so busy. Oh,
Yes.
me too. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
so busy. It's not like that there.
Yeah.
And everyone's smiling more.
Right. I
Weird.
know. It's fascinating, I think, too. Like, I mean, I'm not a professional, so I don't even know if I can comment on this, but like I just noticed that it's such common language now to talk about like, oh, like all of us have mental health problems now, it feels like. And
Mm.
these lifestyle changes, like why aren't they being talked about? Like if we find a culture that people are smiling more, why are we not just like, hey, tell us everything. We're open. Like we are
Yeah.
open to whatever you want to teach us, right? And if it's like, hey, let your lawn go, like don't worry about it. Like, yeah, why don't we take that
Right.
seriously? I don't know.
And why is there less pressure there to have a perfect lawn and a perfect house?
You're
And
right.
they're
That
just,
probably does a lot
it's
of.
more like culturally acceptable, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's not that far away. It's just a different province, to just be slower, to relax, to
Yeah.
sit on everyone's sitting on their porch. They're like having a beer. They're just chatting. It's not like, what are you getting done this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, what are you doing this week? Are you fishing? Are you sitting in, are you paddling
Mm-hmm.
around, in the
Mm-hmm.
ocean? It's very different lifestyle. And it's almost like we're confused here. My mom says all the time, she'll come to visit and she's like, oh, you've got weeds in your front garden. I'm like, who cares? But,
Yes.
she's like, oh, what will the
Then later
neighbors
you think
think?
about it. You're like, oh gosh.
I do. I'm like, should I
Yeah.
go out there and pull those weeds in the front
As
garden?
people are
Like,
coming over, you're like
why?
pulling weeds.
So much pressure.
I
There's
agree. I
only
think
so
there's a
much
lot of
hours in the
external
day.
pressure and about looking perfect and living the
Mm.
American dream. It sounds like it's happening in Canada too.
It
But yeah,
is, yeah.
to me, what
Working
that
out, going
means,
to the gym. These people
right,
get up, they run a bunch. I see these women just running before work, or they're at the gym and
right,
they're like, and they're busting their butts, and then they're
right.
going to work all day, and then they're coming home and
I
they're like
can't
throwing
imagine that.
together a meal and volunteering and doing all this crap and polishing their gorgeous mansions. And I'm like,
Right.
you
How
are
happy are
falling
you
in
though?
bed and
Yeah,
crying your eyes out. I
yeah,
know you're crying
yeah.
yourself to
No,
sleep
yeah.
every night, man. It's
Mm,
crazy. It's
totally
crazy.
agree. I totally agree. I think uh, that social media probably contributes now. Like back in the day, like we would only try to keep up with our neighbors, but now it's like we keep up with
Mm,
celebrities and everyone we've ever known, and people we don't even know,
yeah.
influencers that are only showing you a portion of their life. And I do think that is so heavy to carry
Heavy.
for all of us. And um, also, yeah, it just doesn't at all add to quality of life. Ultimately, I think you're right. Like it can all look. People love to talk about balance, like meaning I do it all, right? Like I have balance in every area of my life, and you just why? Like, are you really fulfilled and living this rich, healthy, vibrant life? Are you enjoying your time with your kids? Are you satisfied with your marriage? Like, what about those things?
Mm. Are you prioritizing rest?
Right, right.
Mm,
Yeah, rest is like lazy now. Like rest,
right.
yeah, rest gets a really bad when you say someone's slow or like you tell someone like, oh no, all I did this weekend was rest. It's like a little
Mm,
embarrassing, I think, for
yeah.
most of us. So I agree if we can have more conversations like this and just kind of start shifting the narrative or even just exposing people to the fact that like, hey, maybe just this is how do you say it? Like common, but doesn't need to be normal. Um, then maybe it'll just start shifting perspective a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it looks different for everyone. For me, like I call myself a burster. So I will work hard for like a day and then take 2 days to like lay around and be, I don't want to say lazy, but I want to say lazy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and then that works for me. I recharge my battery and then I burst again and I recharge my battery. And I think for other people, maybe it's just like consistent. That's the whole thing. Everybody does it different.
Right.
And you got to kind of find what's working for you. But chasing other people, chasing you, the idealized version of you, I think is really toxic. And I know it
Mm,
was for me. Yeah, it made me sad because I felt like I was always trying to climb the top of the mountain, but there was never a top.
mm.
And I just instead took a shovel and made my mountain a lot smaller.
Yes, right. And then you can summit it and you can get that satisfying feeling of like, no, I can manage my life. It's not going to be completely an out of control mess like that we just normalized in the modern world.
Mm.
That's not how life has to be at all.
So someone listening who's feeling overwhelmed right now, they're listening to this podcast, they're like, I am so stressed. I feel like I'm drowning. Let's give them some tangible things that they can do
Mm-hmm.
today,
Mm-hmm.
this week, this month to ease the burden a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like what would you suggest if somebody they can't go to 6 suitcases and go to Hawaii, right? But
Yes.
what can they do today to slowly start making their life feel a little bit slower and simpler?
The first thing that comes to my mind is decluttering because I I I heard this from the minimalists, but I found it to be true for me that while you're decluttering, and I'd be interested to know if this is true for you. Like there's this psychological decluttering that occurs where it's like when you have to finally confront those things you've been hanging on to, like you said, just in case, or just because it's too painful to let them go, something happens. And I don't know if I really even have words for it, but it's very empowering. It forces you into the present moment. Like, instead of hanging on to the past or fantasizing about the future, it's like, this is my first experiment with flexing these muscles of, no, this is my life right now. Let me think about who I am right now and what I want my life to be like right now. And it's physical, which I think feels really good to see progress like that.
And it's hard for some people. And I think starting with sentimental obviously is not the place to go. And if getting rid of clothes is hard for you, don't go there. I think you just like wherever you're standing close by while you're listening to this, open a closet,
Mm-hmm.
open a cabinet,
Yeah.
look at it
Great
differently.
advice. Yeah.
Just grab something and with confidence trust yourself that you don't need it and let it go. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a minimalist, Maddie. I have a lot of stuff, but I'm managing it without it feeling like work. Does that make sense? And I
Mm-hmm.
know when I start feeling like my life is heavy again, I've probably accumulated
Yeah.
too much
Yeah.
or I've taken on too much and I've got to put things down. So I've
Mm-hmm.
found this sort of like balance between I still have stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I can feel it in myself when I
Mm-hmm.
start feeling like life's a little heavy and I just look around at my life and it's sometimes it's not stuff I have to declutter, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's
Yes.
commitment, sometimes
Yes.
it's like workload, but
Yes.
I have to put something down. And that
Mm-hmm.
like thought process has like I got to scoop some buckets out of my sinking boat, right? In the
Yeah.
ocean. I have
Yeah.
to like toss some things out. When I look at it that way, I don't know, it feels like a little bit easier. It feels like less of like I have to let stuff go and only have 6 plates. It feels more like what how can I lighten my life today?
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of thinking about what works for other people, I like that.
Yeah. Okay, you have a course, you have a free ebook. Tell my listeners where they can find you and a little bit about your incredible course because I really do think you're so inspiring and it's a realistic approach to simple living.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Madison Gray, spelled with a U like the sun. And same with my Instagram, so you can find me there. I have a start, like where to start with slow living video on my YouTube that I think if you're hearing this and you're like, wait, I've never even heard of slow living, or the thought, like just the permission to slow down kind of makes you want to cry. Like, maybe start there because I know that's how I felt. And I made that video with you in mind if you're there. So I would say start there. And like, if it resonates with you, then I do have a course that's like the life transformation that I wish I could have walked with someone else through to kind of help me through the process to make it not take 4 years. Although I do believe
Mm.
that like when it's ripe, it's ready. You can't, force things healing to occur. It's not linear, but it just kind of, I hope, and I feel like I've seen with the women who have gone through it, like it facilitates the process and offers support through our Facebook community page, and just uh, it by making the price point of the course what it is, it makes it worth my time to engage with these women and like answer their emails and yeah, just like be there for them as they go through their entire home and their life. It's a life transformational process. So I also have a free ebook. It's just a decluttering guide if you want to get started with decluttering. I know Cass has a lot of resources for that too.
You know what? Different people resonate differently. And so I think a rising tide raises all ships. And if you are wanting to get organized and declutter and just simplify your life, I think you should listen to as many people as possible and follow
Mm,
as many people as
yes, yes.
possible until you find that flicks the switch for you. And for me, it was
Mm.
Peter Walsh. And
Oh, I've never even heard of him.
Yeah, he's the whole reason I started decluttering and organizing. He changed my life. He's my hero, and
That's awesome.
he just resonated with me. His words hit
Yeah.
me in a way, and I
Yeah.
think if you haven't found someone yet
Mm-hmm.
who hits you in that way, keep looking, and it might be Madison Gray. Well, thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Cass.
much, Madison. Thank you for joining me today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll put links in the show notes down below so you can find Madison. And again, I'll see you guys next time.